Welcome back, friends. This week is special to me for a few reasons. For one, it's the first time I've had an in-person guest here in the new studio, and while there are still a lot of things I need to work out on the video side of the house, it was nice to be able to sit across from a guest and have that face-to-face conversation. Secondly, she is one of the most giving, talented, and compassionate people on the planet. My guest this week is Nora McCormack, a high-end wedding videographer here in Maine. I've known Nora for over a decade and can say with zero reservation that she is the reason I fell in love with videography and chose the creative arts as a career. She taught me the art of storytelling and how to create videos that make an emotional impact. Well before we met, she had already established a successful wedding video business called SP Films and was a studio manager for years at Outside Television. For some reason, which is still an unanswered question in my mind, she hired me to host a morning show for Outside TV back in 2015. I honestly still don't know why they let me on air, but despite that huge mistake, Nora is someone that has always had an insatiable desire for adventure and never thinks, well, that seems impossible. Everything is possible in her world. She'll describe herself as having a quirky personality, but it's not quirky. She just has a genuine passion to make everyone around her feel better about themselves. She's the type of person that no matter what they set their mind to, they make happen. Over the past few years, her adventures have become far more grandiose. While most people were huddled in their living rooms during the pandemic, Nora set off on a solo backpacking journey in Southeast Asia. Last year, she set her business aside completely and hiked over 2,000 miles from Georgia to Maine on the Appalachian Trail. You guessed it, alone. That time on the trail fundamentally changed her outlook on her entire life's purpose. She came back with a renewed passion to change her career path and base her business more on helping others rather than just making money. She's in the midst of setting up a 501c3 nonprofit in the wedding space called AfterParty, and I'm going to let her tell you all about it. There's no one I feel more at ease talking to, and I can't wait for you to hear her story. So let's get started with episode 25, which I'm calling Blazing the Trail to Your Ideal Life. And this is my very special guest, Nora McCormack. Nora, welcome to the new podcast studio. You're my first guest here, so if anything goes wrong, I'm going to blame it on you.
That's fine. Cool. I'm a good scapegoat.
Awesome. Mm-hmm. How's Portland? You've been down there a while now, a couple of years, right?
Yeah, I moved from Newry down to Portland in 2021 full time. Yeah. I love it. Like I love being up here in Newry. I love the mountains. I love the people. But I also had a plan to not die alone. So I moved to Portland. And all joking aside, it was just easier for work. Otherwise I was traveling at least an hour and a half for jobs. And, if I can just make that commute a little bit easier and also get good food and see different humans and all of that. That's nice too.
I'm like, keep telling me what that's like.
Yeah, what's
the promised land like down in Portland? All right. But I really haven't seen you a whole lot over the past year. You did the Appalachian Trail.
I did that March 30th to September 15th of 2023. You
gave up your business or stopped your business, right? Mm-hmm. So you were doing high-end wedding films. And you've been doing that for 13 years and
16.
16 years?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Time flies.
So tell me about what that process was like, just to make the decision going from I've got this really successful business to I'm going to go walk in the woods for a couple of months.
Mm-hmm. Business has been going great. I started my business in 2008. And it was just kind of on an upward trajectory until COVID. Yeah. And then in 2020, I lost 90% of my business due to the pandemic. So then in 2021, I had to take on basically twice as much work as I normally do to accommodate the rescheduled events on top of the organic bookings I already had. So I went from no work in 2020 to twice as much as I normally take, which was wildly stressful and took years off my life. And then then going into 2022, I was already extremely burnt out from the year before. I didn't have that off season to recover. It was just, editing and chaos all through 2022. And in 2022, I got into the high-end luxury wedding market, that was always a goal of mine in my business, was to reach that level of clientele.
Like celebrities, athletes, that sort of clientele.
Yeah. So I was traveling, to California a few times. I was taking on events just in different high-end luxury markets that I hadn't really had a lot of experience in before. And I achieved that goal and I got there and I hated it. I stopped relating to my clients. I became the hired help. You were not to be seen. And not everybody was like that, I have to say. In 2022, I had so many wonderful, amazing clients that I consider friends now. I keep in touch with. They were amazing. But it was just that other, the small handful. I don't want to say bad apples because they weren't bad. But it was just, I got to a place that I was aspiring to get to, and I got there and I realized that it just wasn't for me. Yeah. So I was burnt out in that sense. And usually for my business, I book 2 years in advance. But with COVID, this was the first time that nobody was booking that far in advance because nobody knew what the climate would look like. So they didn't know how live events would take place. So then I found myself in 2022 for the first time since I started my business with a completely open calendar for a summer. And I was just like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm taking the contact form off my website. I am letting all my clients know, I'm taking 2023 to myself. This is my midlife crisis. This is my life reset button. I'm not taking any jobs. And
midlife crisis at 37.
Oh yeah, no, I'm gonna be dead by 54. It's fine. Yeah, it was just the first time I had the ability to keep that calendar free. And hiking the Appalachian Trail has been on my bucket list since I was in high school. To finally have the time and financial ability to take that time off and do that was awesome. And it was what I needed mentally as well to kind of figure out what my next steps in the business are.
I remember you went through Southeast Asia a couple of years back, right? And did that experience stimulate again the desire to go on the AT? Was there part of that? I know you've always talked about doing the AT as long as I've known you, but I didn't know if the Southeast Asia trip was something that you were like, wow, I really enjoy this freedom and just being in my own head and no devices. And was that a stimulus to saying, all right, yeah, I can do this now in this part of my life? Or is it really just all the business that you were just explaining, just kind of going down? It seemed like the right time to do it.
Well, since I was in my late 20s, I'd say, I try to do one thing every year that pushes me wildly outside of my comfort zone. Gotcha. And in 2020, that was traveling, backpacking Southeast Asia by myself. What that was that for me that year. And then, so in 2023, I made hiking the Appalachian Trail that thing for me that year. So I wouldn't say it necessarily sparked the motivation to actually follow through with doing the AT. It let me know that I can be super happy and wildly content with nothing but what I can carry on my back. That less is more, and it just allows you to open yourself up to experiences that don't necessarily have to revolve around money or any type of status or anything like that. It's just you're just with yourself and meeting people and you don't need a lot to be happy.
Yeah, you had mentioned in a conversation we had a couple weeks back that kind of stuck with me. You said everybody's equal on the trail. Mm-hmm. Can you go into that a little bit, what you meant by that? And I think I got it, but I want to go in a little bit more in depth about what you saw in terms of the people you encountered, what they were like. I mean, you're doing this by yourself. You're not with a group of friends. What was that whole experience like, both mentally and physically? I mean, physically, it's got to be a grind, but mentally, where were you with this?
I've been telling people the trail, it's 90% mental and 10% physical. It can be more challenging on your mind than it is on your body. I mean, my feet are fucked right now. Am I allowed to swear on this?
As much as you want.
All right. Should have asked that beforehand. You are in physical pain all the time. But as long as your mind is strong, then you you will have no problem hiking the trail. But that was one of the best parts about the trail for me, like you brought up, is that everyone is on an even playing field. So no matter what your upbringing was, where you were in life, how much money you had in the bank, what you do for a career, what you don't do for a career, like, whether you are a doctor, a retired military, whether you're homeless, whether you are recovering from addiction, whether you just graduated high school, like everybody is the same. Everybody is equal. And everybody roots for one another. Everyone is supported, and everybody wants the success of those next to them. And that was the most beautiful part of the trail. Just complete strangers rooting for you. That was really cool. And then, to come back to a fractured society where it seems like there's no good news. There's, it's just to come back into a world where people are expecting things from you, and there's class, societal class, and it was tough to come back to that and to see what the world can be, and then see, unfortunately, what we've kind of created as humans. It's been a little up and down.
How long did it take you on the trail to kind of start seeing that for yourself, right? So I gotta believe that when you started, I know you were traveling like hyper light, right? Like really light for the trail?
No, not really. So people that are that are ultra light backpackers, their base weight will be 10 pounds. They're, they are shaving ounces. They're cutting the handles off their toothbrush to save weight. When I started, my start weight on my pack was 28 pounds. And I was very happy with that. But I met many people that had a base weight of 15 pounds and they were complaining that it was too much. Wow. So it's but then I also met someone that had a 70-pound pack. And
that would be me.
Their trail name was Kitchen Sink because they had everything except the kitchen sink.
I'd have a little red wagon behind me that I'd
That's smart.
Yeah.
Some people, I did see some wagons out there.
Well, the question I was going to ask was, all right, so I know you were traveling pretty light and you didn't have video cameras and all the gear that you're used to traveling with, right?
Yep.
So I'm assuming a phone. And
this was it.
At what point did you start to realize that the world outside, right, the world you came back to, had kind of drifted away, and that you weren't checking your phone, that you weren't taking the pictures or sending people texts, or getting to a point of that trail contentment of just being present, right? At what point did you find that? Did you find that day 2, or was it about a month in, or
I hadn't really thought of that. Yeah. I don't really it was early.
Yeah. Well, the reason I ask, right? So I'm noticing in the creative world, right? Photographers, videographers, authors, everyone's pretty burnt out by having to be attached to their phone all the time. If it's not just for client stuff, which is perfectly viable, it's this world of content creation that we've gotten into where you have to dance monkey, right? You have to put out a reel or you have to put out a post, and it becomes overwhelming. And I know it's really contributed to me having bad days, thinking about the fact that if I don't stay relevant in someone else's eyes, then I'm not doing enough for my business. I feel perfectly fine with what I create, but I feel like, I did a TikTok, now I have to do a reel, and it can't really be the same thing. But, the demographic on Facebook is different, so let me go over there and do that. And then I have to send a newsletter, and I have all the marketing stuff for a business, right? Especially as a solopreneur. And I've kind of gone by my ass to get to my elbow on this. But at what point when you came back did you feel like, yeah, this is not for me?
Day one.
Day one.
Yeah. So I'd say probably 2 weeks into the trail was when I wanted nothing to do with it. I didn't.
That's awesome.
I kept a very basic blog just to let my dad know that I wasn't dead.
Sure.
I didn't keep up with it as much as I thought I would, because at the end of the day, you get to camp and you're with other hikers and you just want to talk and be present, and you don't want to be distracted by a phone. So it would be I would get a call from my dad and get a message from him being my friends are reaching out to me asking if you're okay. Can you update your blog, please? I'm oh, crap. Okay, yep. Oh, yeah, I have to do that just to let people know that I'm still alive. But I'd say probably 2 weeks in, I hated updating it. I hated having it out. I hated just looking at things through a viewfinder and not with my own eyes. And that's like carried over now. Like I personally think that social media is a poison. I have stopped it with my business. I have stopped it pretty much personally. It's all advertising.
Yeah.
And you're just bombarded by whether it's like targeted ads or, and I did this in my business. I was very successful in my business because I was so active on Instagram. That's how I got the majority of my leads. And it's all an advertisement. It's all marketing. And the world is just so full of you need this, buy this. You can't be at this status unless you have this. And it's just gross. And I hate it, and I don't want to participate in it anymore. So basically, I am a tinfoil hat wearing hippie now, and I just, yeah.
Yeah, there's an air of granola in here that wasn't here before. It's more of a...
Oh, no, that's Arm & Hammer deodorant right there. That's Tom's of Maine right there.
I'm surprised it's not like just a crystal that you rub under there every now and again.
Citrine.
We're getting there, citrine. Yeah. Make the money, baby.
Yeah.
So it's fascinating to me, right? Because I feel trapped in this world, right? But I know I've said to you before, when I get on the road, that's where I'm happiest, right? Where I'm in my car. And I don't know, I've been reading more about ADHD and things that calm that ADHD brain. And I'm finding it common that a lot of people get on the road because there isn't all the distraction, all the input, the sensory overload. And so hearing about this peace and contentment that you find on the trail, it's not that much different than what I find when I'm driving 13, 17 hours at a clip, because it does take you away from everything. The best thing that ever happens is when I happen to look at the phone and there's no bars of service. And I'm like, yes. Because I can ride that excuse for a couple of days. Oh, I've just been in a place with no service. And it's wonderfully freeing. So tell me about some of the folks that you met. There's got to be 2 or 3 standout stories, right? Was there one person, one interaction that you had, something that you witnessed that really started to change your mindset and give you new direction on what you wanted to do for your business or creatively or just with life in general? Was there one thing?
I don't think there was one thing. I met so many amazing people on the trip. And a handful of them I still keep in touch with. Even though I started by myself, you're never really by yourself. You're just always, you can be surrounded by as many people as you want or by nobody. You can stay pretty remote. So I met a great group of people that were in my bubble, as they call it. And sometimes I would hike several days with them, and other times, it would be a couple weeks, and then I'd see them again. There wasn't a particular person that made me shift in my mindset. I think it was the ability to be in my own mind, just completely and utterly removed from distractions, from work distractions, from relationship distractions, no matter what that looks like, from the media, from advertising. You are just completely and utterly removed. And I was able to be in my own head for 5.5 months, which sounds exhausting, and it kind of was, but it was like at home I hadn't had the ability to really think and process through just a number of things, whether it's work or personal or all of that. Because you are so distracted. There's always someone that needs something. You have a client that needs something. You've got, you have all these obligations. And my only obligation every day was to find water and eat and find my camp for the night. And I didn't distract myself with audiobooks or music. I only allowed myself to listen to music on days where it was raining because I fucking hate the rain. Picked a great year to hike the AT. But there was so much that I thought that I had processed and thought that I had worked through already, but I really hadn't. But having that 5.5 months to think of everything was awesome. And I think that's what got me to where I am now, with my business kind of tapering off on the video side and trying to shift and go in a few other directions.
So let's talk about that a little bit. So I know you went from being super successful. Not that you aren't now. I don't want it to sound like that.
I mean, like,
but,
he's up.
in terms of income coming in, right? You were doing really well for yourself, took that time off. I've got to believe that hiking the trail is not a cheap thing to do. Even if you have very little gear, it's just the fact that you're walking from Georgia to Maine and you got to buy food and shoes and stuff along the way, right? Mm-hmm. So I got to believe that was a little bit expensive. Did you come up with an idea on the trail to totally change what you were doing when you got back, knowing that you're going to have to do something to work? Was there anything that you were attracted to, or did you have a bright idea on the trail, or because your outlook changed, were you just like, I'm just going to take whatever comes my way and live the life of Cain and wander the earth?
Yeah, so I had an idea in my head for the past few years. Basically, what started it was I filmed a wedding, very high-end luxury. After the event, I am watching them throw $200,000 worth of florals in the garbage, like dumpsters. $200,000 in flowers going in the trash.
That astounds me.
It astounded me too. And it just, I see it at every event. I saw it at my own wedding, that, to just go back the next day and see them throw these flowers in the trash. And it never occurred, like, I just never thought of it. Like, what happens to these? They're going to be blooming for the next 2 weeks. Why are these now immediately going in the trash? And it made me sick then. It made me sick in 2022 seeing an astronomical amount of money basically just going in the garbage. So I sat on the idea for a while of, like, maybe I start a 501c3 and repurpose florals from weddings and events and do that. So I'm, hopefully by the time this gets published, the IRS would have approved my 501c3 filings. But I did file the paperwork at the beginning of January, and hopefully it says it's 60% through the application process. So hopefully that becomes a thing. So that's just seeing so much waste in the wedding industry. I don't want to be a part of that anymore. Right. So I'm trying to find ways where at the end of an event, I can feel good about the work that I've done.
Never having shot a wedding outside of doing a little second shooting for you, maybe. But weddings were never my thing, and I knew that from the get-go. Seeing what the wedding industry was like prior to COVID and then post-COVID, do you feel like there's been a big shift or more awareness about that level of waste, or is it just kind of back to normal? I've talked to a couple of wedding photographers, and they've said that the entire process has changed for them a little bit in terms of the couples waiting longer, having something smaller, less intricate. There's more sensitivity to the waste and the money that's being spent and doing better things. Do you feel like that's a trend that's continuing, or is it just back to business as usual and high ticket weddings are just wasteful? What are you seeing?
I think, like, in a certain wedding market, you are seeing that. So in the folks with the more realistic to you and I budgets, you definitely do see that. You see more micro weddings, more elopements. With a certain demographic, they're prioritizing just having experiences with a smaller group of people. But then in the high-end luxury market, no one was really impacted by by COVID, by the recession, or potential recession, whatever politics. But there's a certain demographic, like the high-end luxury market is not going to be impacted by any of that. Sure. So when I was working those events, there was no expense, it was just, we're going to spend $1.5 million on lodging alone, not including anything else. So
it's a world beyond most people's world, right?
Yeah. But very much beyond mine.
So let's talk about the 501c3, repurposing flowers. How do you do that? I mean, I can understand food waste perhaps, but like catering, but how do you repurpose flowers?
So the company is called AfterParty. My approach to all of this is so couples can reach out to me, or planners or florists themselves if they want to work this into their own business offerings. They reach out to me. I give them a quote of the amount of a donation they will need in order for me to repurpose their florals. So The amount that they would have to spend with AfterParty is based off of the number of floral arrangements, the size of them, and the location of their venue. And with that information, I then send them a quote and say, this is the donation amount that is necessary in order for us to work with you. We get that. At the end of the wedding night, we will come down, collect the florals, not the vessels that they come in, because they would, those belong to the florists and the planners and rentals and all of that. We collect those. We would be doing collections on Friday and Saturdays. And then on Sundays, they will be going to a donation-based market, if you will.
Interesting.
So then the couple can name another nonprofit that they would like to benefit from this market. So AfterParty will be able to accept pass-through donations on behalf of this other 501c3. So basically whatever sells at this market, 75% will go to the 501c3 of whatever couple's choice is, and then 25% will be retained by AfterParty to keep the business going. And then whatever doesn't leave at this market, we then repurpose to hospitals, hospice, shelters, and other local establishments like that. So,
That's amazing.
and it's all 501c3. All donations are tax deductible. So.
That's amazing. Like it's such an innovative idea that combines so many of what I've heard you talk about as your values and your beliefs, right? And I had a conversation recently with a woman who was talking about how she works with value-based businesses and belief-based businesses rather than just capitalism, right? Big capital C. So it sounds like you really had this shift from, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a solopreneur, I've got this successful video business and I'm making a living for myself, to something that is much more value-based and that feels good to you rather than just being part of the system, right?
Yeah.
So if you had something perfect in mind, right? So you've got a $1.5 million wedding and they've got $200,000 in florals, and couple comes and they make this donation and you go down and you bring all this back. Tell me more about this market. So is it a physical market in Portland? Is it a kind of a virtual marketplace that you're just coordinating things online and redistributing? Or can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, so right now I have partnered with Maine Studio Works, which is it's a new not only event space in Portland, but it's a video photo production house.
It's gorgeous.
It's 8,000 square feet of fun. It's just a big industrial space in the East Bayside neighborhood of Portland. Zach Bowen is we're now co-owners in that.
Amazing photographer.
Yeah, he's super talented. But we're going to be on Sundays hosting the markets there because it's in the neighborhood of all the breweries. Yeah. It's in like Brewery Alley in Portland. So when people are out walking around on a Sunday, we're just right on the way. So we'll be hosting that there as long as the old IRS gives me approval for all of this.
That's all going to happen. It always happens.
It will happen. But that's the plan on the location of that. Sure. And then it would just be for a few hours every Sunday. Donations will be made in the name of AfterParty, but then we will just whatever we collect, 75% will go towards that other charity, and then we retain the 25% just to keep a roof over our heads and keep the business going.
So it's kind of like this really cool floral farmers market, right? Now, are you going to, and I'm sitting here, I'm like, all right, what's your business plan? And let's dig into it, and what else can we do, right? Always so helpful I am. Are you going to partner with other 501c3s kind of in this space, or are you pioneering this in what you know in the wedding space? Is this really new, or is there a model like this anywhere else that you've seen?
There are other businesses that do repurpose florals, but the closest market to us is in Boston, and they're called the Reflower Project, and they've been around since I think 2015 or 2018. And a lot of the other floral repurposing businesses that are around the country, all they do is they just collect and then redistribute. There is no market to benefit another nonprofit. And I was just thinking, how can I make this a little bit different, but then also how can I use this business to also benefit the community, the local community, other nonprofits, other charities, how else can I be of service to others? So that's kind of where this whole market stems from.
And I love that. I mean, you're maximizing at every turn what you can do with these florals and give back to the community and support yourself and feel good and sleep at night, right? I'd love to see this grow to a place where you're bringing in, other charities, other 501c3s that are working at that same market, right? And doing the same thing. Is there a plan for that to include other organizations on that Sunday at Maine Studio Works to come in and participate in that as well, if they are aligned with the same sort of values that you have?
That has not crossed my mind. We were I was just planning.
I'll send you an invoice for that.
Okay, good. At this point, it's just I'm only going to have the capacity to work with it in what I'm conjuring up right. Yeah, one thing at a time.
Let me tell you how you should run your business that I know nothing about. Let me do that for you. Let me mansplain to you for a little bit.
Could you?
Could I please? Good Lord, I hear myself sometimes and I'm just like, this is ridiculous. But, it does get my mind thinking a lot more about how anybody can use their business to benefit the community, to serve a little bit more, to get back to what's kind of really important. And I think that's one of the big things that came out of the pandemic for a lot of people was most of the shit that we deal with day in and day out just doesn't matter, right? I saw this a lot in the corporate space where you have people that are quiet quitting, or they're just basically saying, I'm going to work the bare minimum because you're paying me the bare minimum. And as many issues as Gen X has with Gen Z, I think there was this thought revolution that happened that really made people look at things differently. What I'm seeing is more of the solopreneurs and entrepreneurs wanting to do more but not knowing what to do. I want to give back, but I don't want to just give my money to a charity where I don't know where it's going to go or how it's going to be distributed, or it's going to pay the CEO of that nonprofit $1 million a year, which isn't really that much different than anything else. So have you worked with anybody else in the industry that is doing, or maybe outside of the industry, right? I know Maine Studio Works is connected to a lot of folks. Are you seeing that this is a trend with businesses as well that want to give back a little bit more rather than just writing a check to some charity? Are you seeing activity from businesses that are trying to do more down in Portland? I mean, I'm here. We don't have a lot here. So what are you seeing in Portland?
At least in the wedding industry, I know that there are a number of businesses where a certain percentage of their profits, they donate like 2% of their profits goes towards a particular charity of their choice. Even just with the repurposing of florals, there is a demand for it. I've seen, like last season, a few people heard that I was like maybe going to start something. So they reached out to me to let me know like, hey, I've got a client that wants to do something with their flowers. Are you in a position to do that? I'm like, I didn't have the bandwidth to tackle something like that at the time. So I'm like, there's demand for it. And which is good. That means that couples are thinking about what happens after the event, and how they can help contribute towards, less landfill waste, and just all of that.
All right. I'm going to bring it back around to something that we talked about earlier.
Cool.
You're going to have to market this. You're going to have to do something online, social media, right? That becomes the big thing, right? It's such an amazing idea that I think is going to resonate with so many people, knowing that causes a visceral, spinal reaction in you. As you start to talk about this and educate people, what is it that you're going to need right now that people might be able to help with? Is it spreading the word, right? Once the IRS gives you all the paperwork, right? Is it education? Is it talking to planners or couples? Where do you see the most direct route for getting this out there as a model?
Really just networking. Yeah. I've built up wonderful network in the wedding industry in Maine and in New England. So it's just letting my peers know that, hey, this part of my business is going away this year and I'm starting this. I've had great support from several planners, several florists. There are already people in the industry that are supportive of what I'm doing and want to see this come to fruition, not just for me, but just as an option for people that are getting, just to not have more shit end up in the trash and all that,
It's fascinating to me what happens in the wedding industry. Again, I'm an outside observer, right? And you've got this amazing network, not only in Maine, but in New England, like you said. I've got to believe that there's going to be a lot of, duh, why didn't I think of that sort of stuff? I think it could really become a model that's used nationwide, right? And thinking about that growth and what's going to go into that. What keeps you up at night?
Nothing. I rip a bowl before bed and I am out like a light. Sorry, just kidding, kind of.
No. I'm on the train. High five.
Yeah.
So are you apprehensive about it growing too fast, too quickly? Is it just you don't know what you don't know? Does that excite you? Does it make you nervous? Right? This is brand new for you in every regard. I know you're kind of crazy plant lady, but in terms of florals, it's not like you've been a florist for 20 years.
True.
Right?
Yeah.
So what causes you that little anxiety? Forget about the business and the money and all that. Are there any parts of the business that you're like I gotta learn that and fast?
Yeah. I mean, that goes with any business that anybody starts, is you get into it and I know nothing.
Yeah.
And I am here to learn all of that. I've reached out to a few of my florists friends just to be like, hey, I will volunteer to help you break down an event.
That's awesome.
So that way I know the process. I know I can pick their brains about the most effective ways to break down an event. Things that I might not have even thought of that they know just after years of experience doing it. So I will be volunteering my time and service to a few friends this summer just to get in face first and learn that process of it.
Is it your fucked feet?
Oh God, they hurt so bad.
So tell me about that, right? I see you're wearing slippers and I've seen you wear nothing but.
I got footbeds in them too.
All right. Well, we don't have to look at your feet. Thank God this is just audio.
I charge a premium for that service on feetfinder.com. Am I joking or am I not? You don't know.
I know you're not. So speaking about your feet and kind of going back to the trail, you've always been a great hiker, always been in great shape, super athlete. What happened on the trail with your feet? Is it just the repetitive 10, 20 miles a day? I mean, is that it? Is that you have just terrible feet? What happened?
What happened was I walked 2,198.4 miles.
It's kind of a dumb
is what
question.
happened. Yeah, no, it just that'll do it.
Yeah.
No, I had plantar fasciitis in one foot already, and I evened it out a little bit. So I have it in both feet now. But that's the most common injury among thru hikers.
It's not a permanent thing, I can't imagine.
God, I hope not.
Yeah.
But no, I have to do exercises every morning, certain stretches. I have so much energy. I started working out again, and I've started running again, and I'm in the gym 5 days a week running, and I probably shouldn't be, but fuck it, they're fine.
Yeah. What's the next big thing you're doing? Well, I guess I'd say this year, and it's, I'm sure, the business, but is that the big scary thing that you're doing this year?
That is. The big scary thing is closing my business after 16 years. So I am taking on weddings, filming weddings. So I'm doing my last year different. Before I had a set price, here is my minimum.
Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah.
A high-end luxury wedding video. As the world moves to more video, I got to believe there's high demand for it. So where were your prices, right? And what are you doing now?
So in 2022, I had a base minimum of, it's my pricing structures kind of switched. They changed quite a bit.
Sure.
But at one point, my starting rate was $9,500. So that was my base minimum package, and then you could get add-ons from there. In 2022, my average wedding was about at that $9,500 mark. Sure. And this year, I am not I'm telling couples, like, if you prioritize human connection over Pinterest boards, like, if you want something that will stand the test of time over something that'll live on social media for 15 seconds, I want to work with couples that have similar values as I do as far as video content goes, where it's not to be showboaty and show off and look at how much money I spent on my wedding type of situation over thank you for preserving this because this is a family heirloom that, we can pass on for generations. So I'm not limiting, I'm working with all budgets. So I have one couple, they booked for $1,000 and it's, I'm only shooting their ceremony. But then I have another couple, they did book at $9,500 and I'm shooting 2 days. So I'm working with everything like from, I'm working the entire spectrum of budgets because I want to work with people that I can relate to. Yeah. And I don't want people to be limited on having quality video coverage just because they can't afford it.
Again, it comes back to that alignment with what you want out of life, and you want to connect with people that are in that same bubble, in that same level of alignment with how they see the world. Now, I've always seen you, and I hold you up as kind of the standard for storytelling when I'm talking about video, because over the years, I've seen you tell phenomenal stories. And you're relatively, for a video production company, you've run things pretty run and gun, right? It's like typically you and a second shooter and, 2, 3, 4 cameras maybe, but it's generally, a smaller operation. But the stories that come out are just astounding to me. Are you always planning on telling stories that way? Do you have a thought of incorporating video with AfterParty and telling your story? Like, do those documentary wheels turn, and how can I use the skills that I have that I'm no longer using in the wedding industry? How can I tell that same story for, what I'm doing over here now? Is there any plan for that? Do you have that story already forming in your mind, how you're going to tell it?
I mean, it's less of a story and more of like marketing talk, I guess. Sure. Like, I'm keeping all my camera gear. Like, sure. I'm going to stay behind the camera. But it's to be able to, put video messages out there, but like who I am, why I'm doing this.
And that's why I'm here peppering you with questions
I know,
and putting you on the spot.
Shit, I got to think about that now too. Fuck.
Well,
No, just kidding. Kind of.
No, I'm going to relate it to my own business, right? And one of the things that a lot of people look at when they're researching photography is your website, right? And I hear from a lot of people that the videos that I've put on my website, where it's just me talking about the process, have been a huge help. When I was making those videos, it was all about, this is just me. I want people to be able to see me, hear me, understand who I am before they ever call me or send an inquiry, because it helps weed out the folks that either don't connect with me or just don't vibe or whatnot. It's become such a critical part of messaging. I'd love to see like how you create this and what you're thinking about in terms of going to a wedding after the fact and shooting the waste, seeing what's there.
Oh,
right?
That's, yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Shooting the waste. This is what's been going on. This is why I am the way that I am. These are the beliefs that I have. It's that customer education at the same time, promoting the company. And I can't wait to see what you come up with, because I know how your storytelling brain works. And like, you see the world in this B-roll and know exactly the audio that you're going to put over it. And it fascinates me. I'd love to see what you're creating there. Now, do you feel like you have to create like I don't want to say a Kickstarter promo video, but is there anything in the works for that initial marketing?
I have someone working on the website already.
Got it.
And there will be video pieces that are on there, but it's going to be more like the 2-camera setup of me talking about why I'm doing it, how it works. Just go through the process of what people can expect when they work with me.
It's a big shift. And when you do a huge physical event like the AT and you spend all this time in your own head, now that you're back here and you're putting it all into practice, does it line up with what you created in your head on the trail? Are you like bringing that to fruition, or are you finding that in reality again, that it's different than what you had pictured? Or are you just adamantly going towards your goal? I think either one is fine. I'm just curious as to what you're finding now that the rubber's hitting the road.
I didn't necessarily think that it would go one way or the other. Between having this be my last year filming weddings, getting this nonprofit started, and hopefully I'll get the paperwork back soon so I can really hit the ground running. I haven't really been able to do a whole lot with it until I get that approved status.
Sure.
So I've taken over the event side of Maine Studio Works, so also creating the marketing materials and getting the word out that Maine Studio Works is not only available just for photographers and videographers as a production studio.
Sure.
I have 3 things going on. They're not crazy busy, but with all 3 things combined, it's keeping me busy.
How do you feel giving up the video side?
So excited.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Do you feel like you're going to miss it at all?
Some aspects, yes. Like I'll probably still keep some of my clients, a few of them. And I'll probably still second shoot for some of my friends' companies around New England. I'm very excited for something different. I found like every 15 years or so, I need to do something different. Like I did broadcast for 15 years. I've had my business for 16 years. Like, all right, it's time for something new. And so I'm really excited about whatever this new thing is, between the events at Maine Studio Works and AfterParty with the repurposing event florals, and then just letting go of SP Films. I'm happy I was able to bring SP Films to the level that it got to. But it's also so fucking exhausting to try to keep up with everything in the video market. Like, as soon as you get a whole new camera set up, it's like, well, that's outdated. Now you need 8K. And I'm like, people are watching this on their phones. Like, sorry.
No, I'm
like so bitter and just I'm not bitter, but I'm burnt out.
The listeners don't know, but you taught me everything that I know about video. Taught me how to tell stories, taught me how to run production, taught me how to edit, right? Over the years, you've been this incredible mentor for me. You've also been very strong in your beliefs about what people need and what they don't. And been, because of your frugal nature, don't love to see people overspend, right? You don't need 8K if it's a backyard wedding, right? And necessarily depends on the backyard, I suppose. But I think you're very good about giving people the best possible product for what they not only pay for, but what they want. Like, you listen to the customer. Your customer service has always been off the charts. Is there anything that you're seeing, like in the video space, you're just talking about like instant obsolescence, right? Are you seeing anything that's just like, that's overkill? If you're hearing this from a videography company, like, you might want to look elsewhere.
Everyone runs their business the way that they want to run their business.
That's a very diplomatic answer.
Well, no, like I do. I applaud people. Like, I do things differently than a lot of people. Like and I think that's the beauty of having your own business, is you can run it however you want to.
Yeah, of course.
If you want to focus on TikTok videos and like just shoot a wedding strictly with social media in mind, like go for it. I applaud you. Like, that's your thing. Right. And that's beautiful that that's your thing. That's not my thing. And just because I think your thing is poison doesn't mean that I'm right. Like, it's...
Let me liken it to this.
Okay.
Right? So I'm never going to put you on the spot and be like, name names.
Yeah.
In the photography world, a lot of times I see people chasing gear. The business owners chasing gear. If I just get the R5, I'll be a better photographer. If I just get the Sony FX Alpha 9000, I'll just be a better photographer. I need this, I need this, I need this, I need this. When it comes to telling a story, right? I've seen you work with gear that is not 8K, and you're able to craft these beautiful pieces. Do you feel like the art of storytelling is being lost to technology?
I do. I definitely do that, especially with the younger crowd that's getting into the wedding film industry. I've heard from a lot of people that they're shooting these events only with a quick highlight reel in mind. So they're not shooting the entire ceremony. They're not shooting these events in their entirety. They are doing it specifically for certain shots. And they're not thinking of the big picture down the line. So when the bride's mother passes away years down the road, and she's like, hey, you know what? I didn't purchase this at the time, but I would really love her toast that she made. Oh, we didn't capture that because that wasn't any content that would make this quick highlight reel. So I've seen that and I've heard that people come and they hire a videographer and they get this beautiful highlight reel and it's like, oh, this is great. I would love more. Well, we didn't shoot for more because you didn't purchase more.
Got it.
So it's like these people that are coming up in the industry, you have to shoot these events as if as if the client is getting everything. Even if they're only getting a 2-minute highlight, you have to film all of it, and you have to film all of it well to the best of your ability, because also it allows you to upsell after the event. A lot of couples, they don't receive, they get funds, they get money from friends and family as a gift for their wedding. So the money that they didn't have before the event, where they had to have a more frugal budget, now they have this abundance of cash after the wedding. Now we can purchase that longer highlight. But if their videographer is like, well, you didn't buy that, you only got the sizzle reel, so I don't even have that content. It's like, well, you've just done them a huge disservice, and you have lost those memories for them. So that's something I've heard of happening in the industry. And also just, people so focused on getting, having that gimbal shot and following you down the aisle and this and that. And it's like, you're an eyesore. There are other ways to capture moments without being a focal point.
It's not about you.
It's not about you. And that just comes down to experience.
Sure. And I think that nails it, right? So I've seen the weddings that I've gone to, you never even notice the photographer and the videographer. And those are the ones where I was like, they're the pros. Those are the ones that just fade into it. But then you see what they captured afterwards. And it's like, oh, yeah, they were totally worth the money. And then you see exactly that. Someone flying a drone right over the couple at the moment of the first kiss. And you're like, really? It's a flying lawnmower. What are you doing?
Yeah.
But it's this thought that if I can just make this highlight, this sizzle reel that's just fire, then I'm going to be able to get higher ticket clients and grow. And, it's a very entrepreneur bro way of approaching a business. Again, like you said, I don't care how you run your business. The lost art is not only the storytelling, but it's the customer service and why we do what we do. I know I get a lot of times, I try to sell portraiture because there's a legacy involved in it. I had a client of mine recently pass away very suddenly, and we had done a session about 1.5 years ago, and we were great. We kept in contact, and then I hadn't heard from her for a while, and then I saw the obituary, and it floored me. And I reached out to her daughter and said, hey, here were all the images that we shot. I don't know what she provided to you, but I want you to have these. Right. And she was so thankful because we also did a video interview while she was here, and that had never been published, that, I had never even shown her. And it was her mom telling this whole story about how much she loved her kids and all the things that she was going through and why she was doing this photo shoot, and had never seen the light of day. And I sent that to her as well, because that to me is far more important than $1. Right? I would rather do that and make someone feel really good than being like, my condolences. If you would like these photos, it would be $1,500. I just, that makes my skin crawl. And I'm seeing that customer service art is missing these days. There's the chasing the dollar versus creating that legacy, creating the memories, right? We don't just push buttons for social media likes and vanity metrics. We do it to help people preserve these memories, right? We're not around all the time. So it's really interesting that you mentioned that, because I'm noticing it as well. And I'm about to head out to WPPI in a couple of weeks. And it's one thing that I'm always looking for when I get into conversations with other photographers. Where's their heart space? Why are they doing what they're doing? Right? Is it because they're bored? Or is it because they do want to serve and give back? Because they do understand the impact of what creators create and the visuals that we create and the memories that we create. I love that you're seeing that, and I love that you're staying in your place of integrity with not only your own business, but how you're talking about it to other folks as well. You've forgotten more than I'll ever know about shooting video in the wedding industry. And you've got a stellar reputation. I would love to bring you back once we get to a point where you have some time in your hands and you want to come back and talk about that and you're out of the industry a little bit. I'd love to dig in and hear some of the stories and what you would advise people to do. Any interest in coming back?
Yeah, I can do that.
Cool. This has been amazing. Now,
I don't know if I gave you anything that you can use on this podcast, or like Godspeed in the editing process, because this goes a little bit.
But that's what this all is, right? And a lot of people come on the podcast and they're like, what should I say? What should we talk about? I don't care. The whole reason I started Generator was there's a lot of podcasts out there that only focus on your business, your process, your system, the media packet, right? I don't want that. I want to hear you stumble over words. I want to hear you talk from the heart. I want to get to know you a little bit more. And I want anybody that's listening to get to know my guests a little bit more. The behind the scenes stuff. This is why I do what I do. Hearing this story in the detail that you've given it to me, I've known a little bit about what you were doing, but I never knew really the intricacies of it. I can only imagine that this is going to be a huge success.
Fingers crossed.
Right. So immediately in the future, I know you're waiting for some paperwork to come back. What can people do to find out more about what you're doing? Or is there a date when you might have some more information available? Government depending. But how can they get in touch with you if people are listening to this and they want to be involved or want to help, or maybe they're a couple that is thinking about doing this? How do they get in touch with you?
At this point, I'm waiting for all paperwork to come back before I launch the Instagram, before I launch the website, before anything hits the public-facing front. I need to wait for that little bit of information from the IRS. But if people are interested in either video or floral redistribution or, events at Maine Studio Works, Nora at sp-films.com or events at mainstudioworks.com. Those are my two active emails, so people can reach out there.
Get a mailing list going for this. I know.
I'm not going to.
You're gonna have to.
I delete all my emails.
Hire someone.
Someday.
I love this new side of you. That's just that has to do business but hates business. I love it. You're part of the machine, but you're looking for a way out. And
get me the fuck out. No, just kidding. Kind of.
No, I think it's a common sentiment that a lot of people have, and I love the fact that you're walking the walk and following that dream, the big scary dream. A lot of people don't ever do it, and you do it year after year after year, and that's impressive as hell.
Yeah, I'm a psychopath. Yeah. That's fine.
Well, that's one of the words. Thanks for being here.
Thanks.